Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III, and today I'm sitting down with Nick Aalerud. And see, just because I pronounced his name correctly, I'm already a better podcast host than Steve Trang. Isn't that right?
Shit.
Just haymakers right out of the gate, baby.
Jesus Christ. So to be fair, Steve actually said my name totally correctly. It was his editing team that posted it incorrectly one time, but they fixed it. It's all good.
It's okay, Steve. We all forgive you. We all know that you're the 33rd best podcast host when it comes to wholesaling real estate, so it's good.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
All right. Enough making fun of Steve. We love you, Steve. Nick, how are you doing today, man?
I'm well, dude. It's a beautiful day here in Boston. It's a beautiful 38 degrees. I've got some geese outside, and I am in a t-shirt. I'm excited.
There you go. 38 degrees in a t-shirt. That means you're from New England. It's 70 degrees, and I'm wearing long sleeves here in Texas.
There it is.
There you go. So I'm looking over your bio here. I'm excited for today's episode. You have done so many things over what appears to be the last 18 years. I mean, almost everything. Give a concise rundown of all of the things that you've done in real estate over the past 18 years.
Concise would be I lost all my hair, and that pretty much sums it up. But no, started out with a really, really rough start. Happy to share that with your listeners too. But with my first reset, I ended up starting in wholesaling and moved from wholesaling, which is what taught me everything about knocking on doors and talking to sellers. Then moved into rehabbing and condo conversions and like small development, and then went into rentals in a cash flow market. But it's a whole. The story is not as exciting as like the bumps and bruises along the way, right?
Exactly.
So happy to chat about where you want me to go through one by one, or if you want me to
let's, because you talk about these reset buttons that you had to hit, and I think that stands out about your story over the majority of people out there. Most people don't want to talk about any failures that they've had. It's just like, hey, I've been in the business for 18 years, and I've made X amount of millions of dollars. One of my favorites is when we use the total property value amount as the amount of millions of dollars. I've done $500 million in real estate. It's like, okay, sure. How much money did you make? So let's talk about that.
$500.
There you go. What are these reset buttons that you're talking about that you had during your career?
All right, cool. So I'll bring you and your listeners through my journey. Some of them might have heard a couple things, but starting out in real estate, 2004 and 5, I was a corporate big shot banker here in Boston. And they were working me to the bone. I was working 60 hours a week. They promoted me like three different times. I was overseeing 25 people, got to go to India for like a few months, and I was making under $50,000 a year. Oh. And it was a board game. Have you heard of Risk, RJ? You big Risk fan? Yeah. So playing Risk with some buddies upstairs, because I was a politics major, dude. I had no future whatsoever. No one wanted to, who wants to be an attorney and all that. So we're playing upstairs for global domination, like a nerd game. And they all bump up and get me out first. Like all 5 of them ganged up on me. And it's my house. I'm hosting. So I'm the one now watching infomercials until these jerks leave. Right. So pop on the infomercials, and there's the first one, right? Buy real estate pennies on the dollar. John Beck's tax lien free and clear system. And I was like, huh. And as a joke to my buddies over here, I bought a $50 binder in the mail. And I'm like, be careful, guys. You put me out of a board game, I'm going to be buying shit. So that happened, and it came in the mail, and it said, if you're serious about real estate, call this number. And I was like, I guess I've just paid $50. I suppose I'm serious. Right. And the absolute best salesperson in the world talked into my very first over the phone, like coaching boot camp, right? $6,000 boot camp. And that specific one didn't teach me a bunch, but it got me off the table. It got me to start like setting up direct mail, doing some marketing. But I was pissed because after like 6 months later, I didn't even do my first deal yet. And I started going like course happy, right? I went to the Learning Annex in Boston. Trump was there. Kiyosaki was there. The OGs, like all these people. And I just went nuts. I bought everything because that's what I did.
Right.
And I still hadn't done a deal yet. So while I'm finally pushing myself, and there's a whole story about when I actually had hair in a shampoo bottle, and accountability partner, and all that bullshit. But you don't have to worry about that. I don't have hair anymore, so no one believes me anyway. There's a guy out in Minnesota that saw me hustling. He's like, hey, listen, I have access to undervalued real estate. This is in 2005, right? Undervalued real estate here in Minnesota. We're going to line up rent-to-own buyers that'll pay 20% above market rent. So we'll make money on their cash flow for 3 years, and then they're going to sign a P&S agreement to cash us out 3 years later, 20% above what we pay now. And there's a third way we got paid back then. You could actually close. You contract for like $500,000 for a single-family house. The seller would give you a check for $50,000 at closing. You would finance that 90 to 100% finance back in the day, right? And the seller would give you this $50,000 check saying, hey, thanks, good luck. So I'm like, no shit. I'm going to get all my money back on my first closing at the closing table for all these courses I just bought. I'm going to have done a deal. I'm going to learn from this guy. Like, this is a huge no-brainer. Let's not close on one. Let's close on 5 at once in 1 week. Let's do this. Sight unseen. And we had our call with him set up the next week to like next steps and roll in the tenants and get the cash flow going. And he didn't show up to the call. We're like, dude, like, so we started emailing him like, bro, where are you? Like, we got to get these things lined up. He took his portion of that upfront money, 40%. I signed on all the loans. He took that money and he pieced out. There were no tenant applications. They were all fraudulent. There was no P&S agreements to resell a property. But you know what was real, RJ? Was the mortgages. 10 mortgages on 5 properties. And you can only float that for so long. And 6 months later, I hired an attorney to chase him and property manager to try to manage these things. My first 5 deals in real estate went down the toilet. 4 short sales and a foreclosure.
Jesus.
And that put me out of the credit game until 2016, because it didn't take till 2006 to even hit my credit report. Then 10 years past that.
Right.
So that was my first big reset. And I literally thought my like financial life was completely over in my 20s, right? I'm like, oh my God. And all my buddies are still going out Friday nights, like hanging out. I'm like, this is fuck, right? Like what happens now? And I remember thinking to myself, it's 6 months later, this is still my way out of the corporate grind, but now I can't afford to lose any money. I didn't have any credit, and I had to restart with $400,000 in debt on my credit report to all these banks, these unsecured notes. So I had still taken or had paid for a course in wholesaling, and you, Mr. 50 Deals in 50 States, know all about that. So I said, okay, how do I set up my rules where I can't lose money, right? And that became my new MO. And I just knew I had to put in the time and overcome the fear of my phone, which was used once against me. Like collections agents were calling me every 38 seconds. I had to put my phone in the drawer. I had to overcome like that fear of picking up that phone and calling sellers, acting like I knew what the fuck I was talking about, and knocking on doors, which became a beautiful re-lesson, right? Into how to structure deals, how to find value and find a good cash buyer at a local RIA club. And that was my first big reset. I've had 7 more. So you tell me what we have time for.
Well, I want to touch on that. I talked to a gentleman yesterday, and he was talking about he's in a tough spot right now. He's at that one of those make or break moments where he has to reset. And he was talking about, I just don't know if I could do it because I feel so disingenuous when I'm talking to someone because I know that I'm not successful right now. I know I can't actually buy their house, right? Because he's just going to wholesale. So talk about that on the mindset of, hey, you just got into real estate. You basically got scammed. You lost everything for a decade. You lost your credit for a decade. How did you get over the fact that, internally you could feel like a loser, but then you have to get on the phones and or door knock and talk to sellers and act like you're an expert?
Yeah. Well, it started with, taking responsibility. And I had paid for like, I don't know if you heard of a guy named Marshall Silver out of California. No. So he's hypnotist, big Vegas hypnotist guy. And I had already paid for his course at that learning annex that I had never gone to. So I go to this thing anyway, and I'm like, I can't get hypnotized. So fuck it. I'll just go. And I already paid for it. And I remember laying on the ground of the hotel, and I remember like distinctly like a fight. I'm fighting with myself, like of 2 voices, right? Like yeah, that's easy for them to do, but they didn't just get, screwed by this other guy. And then the other guy is like, are you fucking done yet? Are you done complaining? Are you done like saying it's someone else's fault?
Right.
Like, get the fuck up. And by the way, can I swear on your podcast? Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if you know me or not, but
I do. Didn't know if your marketing team was going to bleep you and me at the same time.
I'm just going to throw this out there. I actually won the Closers Olympics by saying 39 fucks to the seller. That's actually how you become the king closer. I don't know if you know that or not. You actually just cuss out a seller. He actually said 4,000 fucks, so I was on the low side. So we're good. Yeah, we're good.
But speaking of which, there's a belt behind you. Just want everybody to be aware of the belt.
So many belts.
So many belts. Love that Closers Olympics. Love that you threw that in there. Yes. Amen. I had my entire acquisitions team watch those Closers Olympics. It's amazing. Thank you for that. But it started there. It started like literally having that other voice say, get the fuck up. Are you done complaining? Are you done making excuses, right? This was not his fault. This was your fault. You didn't do due diligence. You didn't know what the hell you were doing. You just jumped in. So with that responsibility, and then getting out to in-person clubs was really hard because I had just failed, right? Like I'm now that guy. And I got to tell you, I was invited. I was speaking very privately to somebody about everything that happened. And I was very, very private about the whole thing, right? Because failure, all that shit. And that one of the ladies was like, hey, why don't you come speak to the RIA Club about what just happened? I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. Like everybody's going to know I'm a fucking failure and I'm not going to get any deals and this and that. But she's like, you're going to be surprised. Like, and it was my first ever speaking engagement. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I put together a few slides as to the 5 deals. And I just shared, hey, if this can be a learning lesson for anybody, I take full responsibility. And I stood up there. I released like some sort of emotion. And at the end of that meeting, after telling everybody how I just massively fucked up, I had 3 cash buyers approach me looking for deals. I had 2 private money investors. I had a hard money lender come up and want to fund my deals. It was just because of the authenticity, because I was willing to share.
Yep.
So I want to share your listener. Like if anyone here is going through a reset button like that, you can take your time to lick your wounds, but the faster you can come out of it and the faster you can just admit it and tell the world, right? The most powerful person in the room is the one with nothing to hide. Yep. So if you just come out and just share your stories, everyone is craving that authenticity. So how did I talk to sellers? And then I had a cash buyer that said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. If you can go out and find that, I'll pay you $5,000 a contract, which at the time was probably worth $25,000 a contract. But what the hell did I know?
Right.
So I went out and just door knocked and talked to sellers, knowing that I had, someone, I was working with someone that was going to be able to take all those down.
The key point here, authenticity, good. You had to take responsibility at the beginning, though. If you had gotten up there and been real and raw and authentic and just blamed the other person, everyone would have been like, oh, man, come on. Like, you made the decision to do this. That's why when, we've had 2-day boot camps now for 3 years. People come into our office, and one of the things that we give them, outside of everyone gets a bracelet that says create your own reality. Okay.
Yes.
Second, they get a copy of Extreme Ownership. And I tell them you need to read the book because every decision that you make moving forward is your decision. You have to take ownership of that. So I think that right there is what enabled the results that you got from that first speaking engagement. Because if you had not taken ownership, bro, they would have looked at you like, I want nothing to do with this guy at all. He is never going to take ownership for his own actions. So I think that's a huge thing. Now, you're into wholesaling. How in the what's the next reset? How do you mess that up? Because that's that's the easy one, baby. That's the one we all default back to.
That's the easy one. So I did. I got wholesale. It took me 3 to 4 months to get the wholesaling machine up and running. I had that one buyer that moved into a few others and just knocking on doors, talking to a lot of people who didn't speak English, learning the ropes that way. A lot of F-offs, a lot of everything that you go through, right? And I remember 9 months later, I had enough money. Now I knew what a hard money lender was, right? And I'm like, okay, I have enough money to put a down payment down on my first rehab. Same triple decker, same exact thing I was doing here in the Boston area.
Right.
And bought the 3-family, moved it into condos. And I broke even on the deal, which to me was the biggest win of my entire life. I don't have to lose everything by taking title to a property. That's awesome.
Right.
And that moved me into like SOPs, checklist procedures on how to have a rehab company, how to work with contractors, how to assess all that stuff. So I became like the rehabber, right? Using only hard money for the next X amount of years. And then 3 years later, I'm like, okay, this is a really good active income business, but I have to start moving some of this into rentals. Like I knew I got to start doing some passive stuff too. So I wasn't financeable. So I started building like a small rental portfolio out in place Western Pennsylvania, because can't buy anything here for cash.
Right.
So they showed me like an Amish community out there, like an old steel mill, that you could buy a property for like $15,000, put 15,000 into it, and rent it for $600 a month.
Yep.
Now that meets the 1% rule all day long. What I didn't know at the time, right, is that, okay, I can cash flow that for 2 years, but if a roof goes, you're 2 or 3 years out of cash flow.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So I did that.
No one wants to talk about that part of being a landlord. They just want to talk. I bought it for $15,000. I'm renting it out for $600 a month.
Woo!
I just want you to know, as a nationwide virtual wholesaler, all of Western Pennsylvania is still selling for $15,000 and renting out for $600 a month. There's been zero appreciation in changing the rent rates out there.
That's it. I bought in 2009, and we're selling for the exact same price we
Right.
If
anything, actually, they've gone down a little bit. It's like, I think we've done several like $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 properties out there. So you take these down, you're back to buying properties again.
Yep.
Is that where the roof started going out? AC?
Oh, no. Now I'm the shit though. No, see, RJ, now that I have rentals and a big rehab company and a wholesale company, now I'm becoming the shit in my market, right? Like I'm the dude.
Yeah.
So I took another course from another national guru that said, hey, listen, just jump into national apartment syndications, right? So I can be a big shot. I can be the guy that goes around and buys the 500 unit buildings. So I'm like, all right, we're going to systemize this. I got these rentals out here. I don't even have good credit yet. So 2010, I started out hustling, and I find like the first one I find is in Asheville, North Carolina. It's a 144 unit building. And I'm working my butt off to like put the funding together and do the due diligence and like talk to the seller and renegotiate when we find the craziest thing happened. The seller actually lied about their expenses on the property. I know that never happens, right?
Yeah. No, sellers don't lie. What are you talking about, bro?
I couldn't believe it. So it like broke my heart. I had to walk away from that deal. But then I had 3, and I'm going to apologize to any listeners who've ever heard this story, but this is a good one. I had 3 local coaches for that national guru that were here in Boston, saw me out hustling. They're like, hey, why don't you come help us raise equity, raise some cash? We'll show you operations. We'll show you asset management. We'll show you how, like, you can get to see what we already do in our portfolios, and you don't have to pay us any coaching. I'm like, that sounds like a great deal to me. Let's go. So I started working for these 3 GPs. And in the meantime, I started putting money with that national guru. I had money in his deals. I had my own money now in these 3 guys' deals. And I brought in like another $250,000 of friends and family capital. And I was working for them for like 3 weeks. And I got a call from one of them saying, hey, Nick, not a big deal. Just got a call from the SEC. We're cooperating. We're answering the questions. We don't really know where they're calling. So that they're going to call you next, though. So, I mean, good luck. And he hangs up the phone.
Like, good luck.
Meanwhile, I'm still in my late 20s. I'm like, oh, all right. There's more hair coming right out of my head here.
Right.
So I take that call, and I remember pacing. I'm in my real estate office upstairs, my old agency office, and I'm walking back and forth for 3 hours with these 3 attorneys on the phone, just asking me, like, where did you get this flyer? And how did you get this information? And where's this return coming from? And this and that. And I'm just answering, and I'm like, pointing like, I thought they had an attorney. Like, why don't you talk to them? And finally, I'm like, do I need an attorney? And they said, do you feel you need an attorney, Mr. Aalerud? And that's when I was like, I locked up, called the first overly expensive attorney I could ever find, and we lawyered up. And for a whole 14 months, I was deposed, subpoenaed. I had already bought my first house hack, which was also a huge mess, and I ended up selling it to my ex-wife. That's a whole nother story. And a whole year of my life was taken by having to print off every single email like I've ever sent anybody. I had an edible arrangement store with my mom, and they were like making me go into all of those archives, like everything I'd ever done. And it cost me my first marriage. I was married to my high school sweetheart, and what happens when you're not paying any attention to her?
Right.
It was a really, really rough year. So
what were they worried about? They were just worried that you weren't raising capital the right way.
So they don't tell you. Right, that's the problem. They don't tell you. So 14 months later, we finally read the court documents. And, what happened was, right, is they had an investor complaint, which is how it all starts. And that launches an investigation if they feel it's worthy of it. And if they do an investigation, they've got to find something, right? So there was evidence that one asset wasn't doing as well as another. So they took money from this one and funded that one. That's a no-no. There was evidence that they may or may not have taken some investor money to buy a personal vehicle for one of the GPs.
Oh, geez.
Also a big no-no, right? And one of them was an attorney, right? So it becomes a really big deal when 14 months, you have no idea. You have no idea why. And they're bringing everybody to the table. I was just a witness. Is what they said at the end of the day. But that witness cost me, right, over $80,000 in legal fees, a whole year of non-production, and my first wife. So it was a rough one.
So what's funny about this is well, there's nothing really funny about it, but
we can laugh now. We can laugh.
Right, we laugh now. But I mean, when you look at this, I preach this, the hedgehog concept. Have something, be good at it, become great at it, and then if you want to start another business, go start another business. Do you feel the broken focus from, hey, we're making all this money wholesaling, and instead of saying, like, let's be honest, Nick, you were making money, but you weren't making like just gobs of money that you just didn't know what to do with, right? I mean, It wasn't like you were running some $100 million company. You were just making a lot of money for Nick, right, at the time.
Yeah. There's like two of us at that time, yeah.
Right. So do you think the broken focus from wholesaling to then let's become a flipper and then the landlord and then an apartment syndicator, do you think that is really kind of the moral here of like, hey, don't just keep chasing the next shiny object syndrome?
Oh, what a great lesson. But wait, you know what? We haven't even begun there yet, because let me keep going. So now that this all happened, I'm like, I have massive control issues. I will never partner with anybody again, especially with the Minnesota stuff. Like, I'm attracting the wrong people. So I'm like, you know what's going to happen? I want to make sure I know if I get my hands dirty, if an asset starts to go down, a multifamily 3, 4, 5, or 150 unit, doesn't matter. I have to have my ABC checklist, getting my hands dirty, how to take this back up and running. So that then became a whole new set of checklists and procedures for a property management company. And at the same time, right, to be a property manager in Massachusetts, I mean, you have to be a broker. Right. So became a real estate broker. I was a broker for 3 years, and I also made a really smart decision. For anybody thinking about becoming a real estate broker, let me say a couple more things. I was like, there's no investor-friendly brokerages here in my area at the time. So I'm like, this is going to be brilliant. I'm going to be a broker, and I'm going to go up to all my RIA clubs and be like, hey, I have the first investor-friendly brokerage. Come on in.
Right.
And this happened that was 2011. And I had 0 to 40 agents in 1 week. And I had no back office. I had no systems. I didn't know what the hell. I never even put anything on MLS before because I'm an investor, right? Never needed to do that before. And all these people wanted coaching and guidance and leadership. And I was not the one to give it to them.
Yep. So how could you? You never done it.
No. Well, they're all investors too. I could teach investors, right? But I don't know MLS. I don't know all this stuff. So huge lesson, right? Doing that for the wrong reasons. And I stayed a broke. We had to let go. And the hard money lender at the time was like, you don't pay these people. You can let them go. Like, oh shit. I guess that's right. So I had like conversations with 37 of the 40, and I restarted with just 3. And that was another journey. So now with all of these things, and in the time, this is all getting to my big midlife crisis, right? At the time, all of these vertically integrated companies were supplementing, right? Like the wholesale rehab and rental business. Like, oh, I have a brokerage now, so I can save money on dispo. Oh, I've got a property management company, so we can obviously manage our own entities and get access to off-market multifamily for later, right? Like we can do all these things. And as we continue to grow and vertically integrate with, my team started to get bigger and bigger. And then we started, really scaling up. We had not yet scaled the acquisitions team like you had.
Right.
So we finally get to the point where, okay, let's go and scale. We have these 8 companies. Let's take our acquisitions, to 7 different states across the country.
Of course.
And let's bring our team up to, we went from 3 people to 10 people to then 30 people on salary.
Hold on. I want to guess what your next move was. I'm just going to say, because you had everything else going on, you said, hey, that politics degree, let's put it to good use. And you went to law school so you could also be the closing attorney for you. Is that what you did next? So
no, my third wife's my real estate attorney. But besides that.
Okay. All right.
No, and that was it was just 2021 now. So let's fast forward. There's a bunch of resets too, but I know we're short on time. 2021, I'm about ready to go to Kilimanjaro, the mountain in Africa, and I remember something's wrong, something's off, and I hated my life. I was locked into 22 Zoom meetings a week of accountability, of management, of motivating, and I just remember I'm on the top of that mountain. I'm like, this is not why I fucking got into this business. And I went all the way back to me watching that stupid infomercial. I'm like, they said something about financial and time freedom. Like, what the fuck was that about?
Right.
Let me go back to what that was. And instead of saying to my local groups and going on podcasts and saying, look at me, I got 35 people and we're in 7 different states and we have all these vertically integrated, how much of that was ego versus how much of that was me actually going to the shit, doing what I wanted to do, doing what I set out to do in the first place. And I had a massive, massive shift just in June of last year, 2022, where I had this vision of 7 castles melting into the ground. And I didn't even know what it meant. And it turned out in July, I'm just this doesn't serve me anymore. Shut it down. Property management, shut it down. Sell the brokerage, shut it down. I just started going through little by little. No. And now if it's not a hell yes, it's a fuck no in my life.
There you go. Hey, I want to say something. You're the first person that's fast forwarded a story to, I was standing on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I mean, that you just casually threw that out. The mountain in Africa. I'm just standing on Mount Kilimanjaro.
There's a couple lions.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been better if it was Mount Everest, but whatever.
In my underwear.
Yeah. So what does the business look like? What are you doing today?
Totally. So I found it wasn't just me that had this disease, right? I know you had Brad Chandler on your podcast a few weeks ago. He and I both had our midlife crisis at the same time, I feel. And it was this beautiful reawakening. So, even now, we've been a coach in that field, similar to you. I mean, I've been a coach since 2012,
right?
But I realized I've been doing it all wrong, right? Coaching people how to scale and how to get to this massive, big company that has a ton of overhead where they still have to hold people accountable, but it's okay because you can say you've got all this stuff. So now there's a huge focus on bringing them to financial freedom within 5 years or less, but doing it in the right way. Right. One of the biggest resets that wasn't even real estate related was when I made a massive mistake with my second wife. I wanted, and I've said this to her since, I wanted kids almost more than I wanted a wife at the time. And it was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. We thought we loved each other, right? We got into it.
Right.
And when that ultimately happened, there was never really any love there. So we had the 2 kids. And of course, the big, big, big breakup came. And I'll share that with you too, RJ. So we'll go ahead into, you and I are part of a bunch of masterminds, right? So I'm heading to, at the time, it was a Collective Genius Mastermind, and I had won my belt 3 times in a row at the time. So we have that in common. They kept taking my belts back. Unfortunately, I don't get to keep them.
There you go.
But I had won 3 of the belts in a row, which is this is CG, right? Top 1% of investors across the country. They all go. There's a big give for 15 minutes, and I had set up this, setting up my evening and morning for massive success personally and for my business. And I had this big give to give with my routines and habits. And I'm driving to the airport when I get a call from my then wife's attorney and says, so, I'm calling to find out when you're planning on moving out. You have 7 days to vacate your home. You have to pay for everything still. You're not going to see your kids. And I'm going to just, let us know what date you'll be moving out while you're going away. And I realized as I'm flying down, I'm like, I'm fucking homeless.
Yeah.
Like I 15, 20, 25 million assets under management, and I'm fucking homeless. And I start going back through all these decisions and stuff. Like all I wanted was just to be an impact to my kids, right? That's all I wanted.
Right.
So I go to CG, and I remember like that night trying to get through this presentation, and it was the first time I had my first big ego death. So I'm going there to try to share, and I remember like just melting down into tears right onto the ground. And like I literally couldn't even speak. And Medley was there, and Corey Boatwright was there, and a whole bunch of people were there. And I just remember like I couldn't get through the presentation. I was just a ball of tears. And I didn't mean for this to happen, but I did get a sympathy vote. So I did get the 4th belt in a row.
I was gonna say, I mean, just for the spirit of the game, I mean, if you just got up there and cried for 15 minutes, they're giving you the 4th belt in a row. I mean,
wasn't my intent, right? Wasn't my intent, but that was the biggest moment I think in my life where my ego had its first big death that it so needed,
Yeah.
And since then it's like, what's ego and what is what we are looking to do? And going back to Brad's talk, right? Like how much of the shit are we doing to prove ego or prove our worth to someone from our childhood, right? Versus what's actually getting us to the time, financial and spiritual freedom that we're seeking.
I think sometimes we don't even know why we're doing things. Like, it is so cliche. But I think that was the problem. People used to talk about what is your why, and then it became, well, that's cliche. So we stopped talking about it. Then all of a sudden you realize, well, we just do a lot of stuff that we can't even explain to ourselves. And we don't even have a lie that we tell ourselves why we're doing it. Like you said, the property management. Well, because we're already doing it. So why not bring that in-house? And then, the brokerage and all these other things. Well, sure, have a brokerage. Don't have 40 fucking agents. Like, there's a lot of different things that just don't serve our end goal because we don't even know what we want.
Exactly.
I mean, dude, let's be real. You were making less than 50 grand for a bank and you saw an infomercial, and then from there it was just fucking chaos. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, for me, I mean, I borrowed $65,000 on my mom's credit card to learn real estate. And right out of the gates, year one, $750,000 in assignments.
There it is.
Dude, I had never made more than 30 grand in a year. Like, well, I guess as an entrepreneur, there were some good years, but that's hard to actually allocate how much money you're making when, it's like, all right, we did $500,000 in revenue. How much of that was actually RJ's money? If you do $750,000 in assignments, and it's like, well, hold on, there were no contractors, there was no, material. This was just, holy shit, we were doing off the MLS. This was like, we didn't even have marketing. But the chaos came in. The exact same thing, dude. We started buying properties, bought all over the country. I had more houses than you had agents in freaking Alaska. Like, holy shit. It's just dumb. I mean, and so same thing, hard resets, short sales, lost properties. I'll never forget having zero emotion when I got the call that one of our houses in Hawaii was devastated because a tree fell from above and wiped out the entire house. And I had zero emotion. You know why I had zero emotion? Because I was like, we were going to lose on that one anyways.
Yep.
It was already a loser in my mind. So file the insurance claim and hey, one less loss. Yeah. Kind of like the Cleveland Browns when we accidentally win. All right, well, we got one win. So
That's not your business model, though. I know, me too. Some of the insurance deals are our best deals we've ever done. That's not our actual business model, though. Just like you, right? Yeah,
exactly.
agreed.
So I want to ask you, your podcast, Shut Up and Do It. That's what we named the episode. Why is that why did you choose that name, and what do you mean by it?
Sure. And it's timely that you should ask that question because we did just rebrand. However, Shut Up and Do It was the voice that I need. Is going back to my very first call to a seller, right?
Yeah.
My reset after my 5 deals went bad. And I remember sitting at like my little desk in my apartment, and I had all my coaching scripts out, right? Like, okay, and to make sure I say that, and I have to get my lucky little pen over here. If I have my lucky pen, I feel better about it. And I have my laptop over here with my notes. And like, okay, you know what? Maybe if I print out the public record, I'll have the paper copy. That will help me really assess, because I didn't have the tools back then, right? Like, okay,
Right.
you know what? What if they owe something on the property? I'm going to actually print off the masslandrecords.com, the registry page, just to make sure I know who their lender is and how much they roughly owe on the property. Okay, cool. All right. So what else would I need for this? Fucking shut up and call.
Right.
And for me, so it became like, for me, my brain would do anything it could to procrastinate doing the shit that was required.
Yep.
And that became, and it's not just me, I found, right? And you, with the people you teach, it's not just me, it's all of us. So it wasn't built for, and it also became really effective too when I put it on my shirts and I started going to job sites and I just point to the contractor crews like, dude, like that's our tagline. But it's all about silencing up here.
Yep.
Right. Like the mind trying to protect you, trying to get you to stay in your comfort zone, trying to like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Don't do that. Like, shut up and do it. Don't think, just go, just move.
Yeah.
And that became everything. We had the tagline on our laptops. We had it on our swag bags. We had it in big frames in the office. And it became just a mantra for everything we did. And it was just silence our brain whenever we felt a little uncomfortable. No, that's important. Go, move towards that. Right.
Yeah.
And
that's listen, when you talk about talking to sellers and the actions that are needed, especially when you're talking about wholesaling, I mean, it needs to, I call it become a machine. Where, when you turn on a machine, the machine doesn't say, but hold on, let's think about it. We need to pull the records to see what the mortgage is going to be. The machine just goes.
Yeah.
The machine just repeats its process over and over and over and over again. And if you could get to that level where, every time you talk to a seller, it's a repeatable process. You're having the same conversation. You're asking the same questions. It should be the same questions. I mean, you're doing the same thing. If I'm buying Nick's house, or if I'm buying, Grandpa, Bill in Wyoming, or I'm talking to an 85-year-old lady, I still need to know the exact same information. It shouldn't be different. You just got to talk a little bit differently. So I love that, man. That's why listen, you and I talked back in 2020.
Yeah.
I got a deal in Mass, and we were Facebook friends. I reached out to you about that deal. It was in North Adams.
I can't believe you remember that. That's so funny. Yeah.
North Adams. And I remember all the details about that deal, baby.
That's a sick memory, dude. I'm not going to lie. How many deals have you done?
A lot. I've done a lot of deals, but I'm normally salty about the ones that don't make it to the finish line. So basically what happened there is I bought the thing, I sold the thing, I just never got paid. The seller and buyer decided they wanted to work together and say, what do we need RJ for?
Yeah.
Love that.
To be fair, I wasn't the buyer on that. To be fair,
no. Nick basically just told me, "Hey, North Adams is way out there, bro."
We call that dragon country out there. That's like 2.5 hours from civilization.
I remember I was like, how do you feel about North Adams? And you're like, I don't ever think about North Adams. Like that's way out there, RJ. So anyways, but when we talked, I immediately felt a connection to you, because I think we didn't talk about the resets. We didn't talk about the failures, but I could tell there was a similarity in our mindset about like the shut up and just do it, take the action. You were talking about, you had people on your team, watching my lives and different things like that. And it's fun to see, someone say, hey, I've had a ton of success, but I've also had these failures. I mean, to our listeners right now that might be going through something like what you're talking about, whether it's business related, hey, they made a mistake, or whether it's personal, hey, they're going through a divorce, they can't see their kids. How do they just shut up and do it? How do they get over the fact that, hey, I've got all this going on, but I still got to pick up the phone and talk to that seller? How do they do that?
The length of time that might start with years and might start to shrink down to 1 year, then 6 months, then 2 days, where you can stop feeling bad and sorry for yourself. Like if you can start to shrink that down to what you mentioned, the machine.
Yeah.
You shrink it down to the point where there's always something to be taken from every single decision and action that happens in our lives, right? Not only that, I mean, if you get really fucking deep, like I'm in, me and Brad are deep now, right? We might have actually signed contracts before we came into this body as to all the shit we were going to have to go through and learn. So we already made the agreements to get through them. It's just a matter of when we get through them, do we take the learning and how quickly can we move forward with that new learning? So if you can shrink and become that machine, like you mentioned, right? Like with what you do, and it's funny because even my acquisitions folks at their peak, like if they were getting sworn at by a seller, they'd always they'd have to shake that off. And it's funny because watching the machine, watching you, right? Like you were on to the next, fuck you back, on to the next. Yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah. It was beautiful. So I think getting our hearts and our minds into that one little machine, like, okay, take the hit, let's feel it, let's assess what needs to be done and move forward, right? How can I become a better leader? How can I become a better father? How can I become a better business person? How can I become, and using that to make me better versus wallowing in that shit.
So you bring up being a better father. Let's just use that for an example, because you could do it with husband, you could do it with leader, you could do it with anything. Let's just talk about kids. Okay. Every night I come home, my children ask me, how was my day? Now, imagine if when I came home, I gave them a brutally honest answer where they say, how was your day, Dada? And I say, well, son, at 11 a.m. this morning, some toothless hillbilly said, fuck you. And so I decided to sit in my feels for the rest of the day, and I didn't call anybody else. And I basically just jacked around on fucking Facebook and Instagram. That's how my day was. How was your day, son? Don't you want to be just like me? Like, that is kind of where I'm at, where it's like, bro, like, I'm going to use another example, an actual example that just happened this past weekend, okay?
Yes.
My son playing a hockey game, first game of the tournament against a team from St. Louis. Defenseman shoots the puck. My son plays center. Goalie goes to save it with the glove. It bounces off the glove and goes straight down. Him and his teammate dive for it, and they push the puck into the net. Defenseman cross-checks my son in the back. He falls down. He's on his butt, celebrates the goal. He raises his hand. He stands up, and all I see is as he stands up, he instantaneously goes from smiling to cringe, pain, grabs his knee, and falls as hard as he could, as if like he had broken his leg. And I'm freaking out because I played sports and watched sports my whole life. He wasn't in pain on the ground. He was only in pain until he put his weight on his leg. And I was like, oh my God, he's actually hurt. Like, this isn't one of those, he's 10 years old, 11 years old. Okay. He's hurt. So I have to walk all the way around the glass to get back to their bench. And his teammates are essentially carrying him off. He can put no weight on it. So I stopped to watch his teammates carry him off just to make sure, like, I don't need to go out on the ice. And I stopped right in front of the other team's parents. And they started cheering. Number one was hurt. He was in the crease. Yeah. The refs said no goal. And they all cheered. And they were saying, number one, he was hurt. And I lost it. Full dad mode. Grizzly Bear came out. And I was like, how are y'all going to cheer? A 10-year-old getting hurt Who cares about the game? So I go around and I look at my son and I squeezed his knee and he said, yeah, that hurts. Moved the knee. He says, no. I said, what happened? And he said, I think a stick or a skate. Well, come to find out, I video every single one of the shifts. That big defenseman that pushed him down as he was standing up took his stick and whacked him right in the back of the knee. Well, I didn't catch that because I was staring at his face because I was enjoying that moment of them scoring the goal.
Yeah.
So I looked at my son. It was a tie game. They disallowed the goal. And I looked at him, and this is one of those moments, right? I talk about embrace moments. This is also like that moment where we talking about talking to a seller, and the seller says, fuck you. Okay, you can sit in your feels. I told my son, there's 8 minutes to go in the game. They disallowed the goal. Do you want to go out there and win the game? And I see he's making that decision. I looked right at him and I said, every single one of those parents cheered because you were hurt. Why don't you go score a goal and tell them all to go fuck themselves? And he goes, on it. Face mask on. Bro, before I could get back around, he was on the ice getting the game-winning assist for them to win the game.
Oh, wow.
Bro, I swear to God, I lost my vocal cords. I haven't been able to talk until today. But again, this goes back to the business side of things, man. We have moments. We have choices that we can make. You can sit in your feels. Hey, wife left you. All right. Hey, seller cussed you out. Deal got canceled. North Adams buyer and seller decide to work together. Do we sit there? Do we cry about it? Or do we move on and we shut up and just do it, man? That's why you and I connected a long time ago. And I feel like we don't talk very often, but I've always felt like we're kind of kindred spirits when it came to that mentality. So I appreciate you letting me share that story, man.
That was a great story. I'm like tearing up. That was really good.
Hey, you know it's real when it's like, hey, there's so much emotion in that moment. Yeah. And I looked at my son and I was like, man, I couldn't be more proud of you because he could have made that choice. And if you're setting that foundation for your kids where they make those types of choices at 10, 11 years old, imagine what they're going to be able to do when they're our age. And we're every day, bro, we have a reason not to do what we do.
Yes.
Every day. So
yes.
Dick, how can people find out more about you? I know you have a coaching program out there, so talk about that so they can find out more about you and your stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's really interesting because we did just pivot the podcast itself. Shut up and do it is still going to be our mantras forever. But there's also a point where, we just rebranded it to the Journey to Freedom podcast for obvious reasons, because you don't need to scale to a 30 or 40 person company, right? You don't need to have vertically integrated companies all over the place. And you certainly shouldn't do it at the cost of being a poor father, poor partner, poor spouse, poor leader, poor all that stuff.
Or even like me and you, just for your hair. I mean, imagine if we still had hair, bro.
The best decision I ever made, RJ. Listen, I spend way less time in the shower. I don't even have to invest in shampoo. You don't even know. I don't have a bedhead anymore. Fucking amazing.
Hey, so one of my employees asked me the other day, I shaved my head. And so, because I still got a little, in certain spots, I'm the weird kind of bald. My bald is like not attractive whatsoever. I can't do the whole rot look like you got going on. And so he asked me, he goes, so do you soap the head or do you still use shampoo? That was one of my acquisitions guys.
Oh, I love
like, who fucking thinks of these questions? And I said, I still put shampoo on there. All right. It's still an honor. Okay.
It is. Yeah. RIP. I do too, a little bit, just a little bit. Usually it's for the beard and I'm set that up.
Oh man.
Oh, that's awesome.
How can people find out more about you and where's the best place for them to follow you?
Just totally appreciate that. Yeah. So you guys can check me out. Instagram, the gram, Nick Aalerud, my first and last name. Facebook's also good. I'm old, so I'm actually usually on Facebook more than Instagram. You guys can all connect with me on there. But yeah, we do, if you want to jump up to the peak of Kilimanjaro, or, we do have REI Accelerated is our coaching program, which is really all about reaching freedom within 5 years or less, right? Using specific frameworks that aren't all real estate focused. That's the whole point, is like, how do we get to the freedom that we sought out to begin with? But and yeah, thanks, man. Journey to Freedom podcast. We're going to have RJ Bates as a guest with our, he doesn't know this yet, by the way. I'm just saying this right now. RJ is going to be a guest on the podcast. He's also going to be supplying a fantastic module for all of our community. Thank you so much, RJ. Appreciate that.
I appreciate that so much. I'm glad that my agent signed me up for that without me knowing. Hey, I suggest everyone to go sign up for Nick's program, REI Accelerated there. Do it before you're on the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro, okay? Like, that's the goal. You do it before you get to that make or break moment. Nick, had a great time with you today.
Awesome.
And Steve, I know you're still listening out there. That's how you fucking host a podcast right there. That's why I only get 5-star reviews, unlike your 3-star reviews, Steve.
Oh my God.
So, hey,
Steve Trang, he really loves you. I know, for deep down, like, you gotta go real deep.
Deep down, this is like when you have your little brother that can't play any sports well, but you know one day he's going to find something that he's good at. That's you, Steve. One day you're going to figure it out, buddy. And I'm going to be right there and be like, I always supported you along the way. All right, guys. Had a blast. Hope you did too. We'll see y'all next week.
See you later.